Experts expect the arrival of the Eassy cable to increase competition for internet connectivity in the region, with the possibility of reduced connection rates. The cable, constructed by a consortia of telecommunications companies, offers a direct route to Europe, and it's the largest cable system in sub-Saharan Africa. Joining us now from our Nairobi studios is Chris Wood, who's the CEO of the West Indian Ocean Cable Company that owns 30% of the Eassy cable. Thank you very much, Chris, for coming through. Now, we know that earlier this year, the Eassy cable was already being deployed past the Red Sea, entering African shores. Can you give us an exact timetable as to when we can expect the launch of Eassy and how that's going to improve on connectivity in East Africa and the region at large?
Sure. Eassy was completed back in April in terms of the physical construction of the system. And then last Friday, it was finished all its testing program, and we were handed over the system from our contractors, Alcatel-Lucent, who built the system for us. So we're now in the process of lighting all of the traffic that belong to each of the consortium members of the cable, and we'll see those circuits come on live in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
All right. Now, in terms of improving connectivity, because that's what everybody is expecting, is that submarine cables should make broadband faster.
Sure, it'll do two things. First of all, it'll provide great diversity for the existing systems which touch Kenya and other countries on the East African seaboard. One of the features of the submarine networks is that it provides fast connectivity to Europe to reach the internet. But also, when you have a cable cut in the sea, as we've seen over the last few weeks, you have a material impact on the speed the internet runs at. What Eassy will do is provide great diversity for those other cables, so we won't see such an impact against our cable outages.
Talking about cable outages, can you just give us a little bit more detail as to what it is you're going to do to improve on blockages? Because we know that one of the rival operators had a problem during the course of the World Cup and consequently couldn't come up with a backup system because all other operators were busy servicing FIFA, and that really created a lot of delays, especially for consumers in South Africa, who make up the majority anyway of internet consumers on the African continent. In terms of the lessons to be learned by Eassy and WIOC, what are you going to do to make things better and more efficient?
I think really we want to get the message across that each cable system supports each other. Throughout the world, there are multiple cable systems serving many countries, and what we see is if there is a fault on one cable, the traffic will get migrated to a second or a third cable. What Eassy will bring will be that backup for existing cables, but it'll also act as the primary route for a number of carriers. If you look at who actually owns Eassy itself, it's owned by 26 telecoms operators from the region, and they'll place a large part of their commercial traffic on our system. And if there's any trouble on that system, they'll use other systems to back it up as well.
All right, talk to us more about the collaboration between this consortia of telecoms companies, because I know that WIOC is the investment vehicle through which about 14 first and second tier operators have raised capital and are sharing on resources. In what way is it going to help servicing the traffic, but also getting through an increased proportion of data services? Because isn't that the new way now, data services?
Yes, it is. I mean, one of the major features of the system is that it carries a lot of the internet traffic of the region. About 95% of the total capacity that's used on these cables is internet related. And what we've seen with our 14 shareholders, they're putting a lot of their internet traffic over our system. One of the benefits of having 14 regional operators is that they all work together in a collaborative way. So we see that we'll be using Telecom Kenya's network in Kenya to reach Uganda with Uganda Telecom, and beyond that going towards Burundi as well. So each of the operators is working together very, very coherently to make sure we have resilient backhaul networks as well as just serving the coastal countries.
All right, let's talk about the reality of the environment we're operating in, because as consumers, we definitely want faster broadband access. But internet connectivity in Africa is still very, very low in terms of penetration. We're looking at figures of about 8% on average across the African continent. And the real ICT revolution is with the penetration of mobile phones and consequently operators providing data on handsets as opposed to the internet. Does that in any way affect your growth going forward? And what are you doing to collaborate with operators who are looking to the handset mobile phone as the revolutionary tool versus the internet, as it were?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. It's all about making it affordable for the users. And if you look around the rest of the world, most of the internet connectivity is through PC computers, laptops, and MacBooks. That's the way the rest of the world, or the developed world, is using the internet. What we're seeing at the moment in East Africa is a far greater proliferation of mobile devices, and bringing those smartphones to the end user at an affordable rate will be the most important dependency on penetration. If we can do that with the operators and help them to penetrate in the market in that way, I think we'll see a greater take-up. We're also working with schools and universities to bring cheap bandwidth to those sorts of non-commercial entities. And if we can help them develop the applications and also provide low-cost bandwidth for those sorts of institutions, we'll see a greater take-up of the youth, which will then translate into businesses at a later stage.
All right, and finally and briefly, Chris, the costs, because with the coming of other submarine cables, we were expecting to be paying less for broadband, and that hasn't quite happened. And the argument by the various operators is they need to recover their investment costs, at least in the initial phase. So cost cutting is only a long-term measure, whereas consumers were expecting it to be almost immediate. Why is that, and how is Eassy going to try to meet the consumer halfway, just in terms of tagging a lesser price?
Sure, I think two things will happen. One is that the size of the bandwidth that each of the users is taking has gone up considerably, and we'll seen already that the cost per megabit has actually gone down considerably from last year. If you look back to before the submarine cables arrived in Africa, most of the traffic, or all of the traffic in Eastern Africa, was over satellite, and the cost per meg was at several $1,000s per megabit. We're now seeing that come down to several $100s per meg. So the cost of bandwidth itself has definitely come down. What's happening is we're selling a higher amount of bandwidth to each user. So maybe their total expenditure hasn't come down as much as they would like to, but their total usage has gone up considerably. So they're getting a much better service for the same amount of money. The second thing, now that we have Eassy in the market as well, you have 3 cables touching Kenya, 2 cables touching many other parts of Eastern Africa, and that will add definitely to the competition. And we'll see prices come down over the next 2 to 3 years. They won't come down immediately to perhaps the levels that everybody wants them to, but we will see them come down on a staged basis over 2 to 3 years' time.